So welcome to the T Construction Podcast. I'm Brad Levitt, and today we have Ben Horning, who is GM, General Manager of Berks Homes from the great state of Pennsylvania. So welcome, Ben.
Thanks, Brad. Great to be here.
Yeah, I actually feel bad because I actually had my Builder 20 meeting out there in Hershey, and I'm like, you know what, I probably should have hit a Ben and drove over there and saw you for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's like an hour away. Like I said, one of our regional offices is right around the corner from there in Harrisburg. So it's not far. Hershey Park.
It is a good place. You know, I will say it was really nice. The time of year I went is a little cold, not too bad, in October, but I can't imagine right now in January. So I think I'm pretty happy here in Phoenix.
Yeah,
so.
it's warming up. It's 27, so.
It's cold. This morning I think it was like 33, and which is like about as cold as it gets for us. And I'm like, I can't handle this. This is not going to work.
Yeah. Well, before we go into anything, I don't know if I told you this. One of our employees lives in Scottsdale. She's a virtual employee. Yeah. She.
So let me ask you that. How
she moved out there?
This is something I've tried to understand. How do you go virtual in construction? Or what's the role they play? I should say.
Her name's Megan. She does like project coordination for our On Your Lot division. So. On Your Lot to us is like what you do. You're building for people on their own land. So not, you guys don't buy much of your own land, right?
Right. We don't buy any of our own land.
So for us, primarily we work in communities that we own. So we also do about 40 a year with people who own their own land. And that's what she does. So she does project coordination. She helps them with selections. And now, I mean, with a lot of people working from home anyway, it's really not that big of a deal. She does a great job.
So do you make her wake up extra early since different time zone?
Yeah. So you guys, it's like weird. It's like 2 or 3 hours, right?
Yeah, because Arizona, one of my favorite things about moving to Arizona is something that everyone should adopt is there's no such thing as daylight savings time. So we don't change the clock. So that's why in the winter, we're on the mountain time, right, which is 2 hours behind you. And then, summer, we flip back to the West Coast time. So, which is pretty nice. I mean, I don't know why we still do that. But
yeah, it's stupid. Anyway, that's not why you had me on.
That's not why I had you on. So, Ben, I mean, the reason I had to have Ben on, I mean, he is, we've been friends now through Instagram and media networking events for many years now. And, Ben, you're someone I really respect and, have a lot of knowledge, and I know one thing that I know you and I have spoken about a lot offline is company culture, which is really big, and you have a very unique company culture that I want to get into because, it's one thing when you're a company of my size, 15, 16, as opposed to 120, and I think it's really difficult when you're at that level. But before we get into that, I mean, right now in this absurd market, we were talking about the Builder Show that's coming up, and we'll be out there, the complexity trying to get out there. But what are, especially for you, because you have such a diverse product, as you mentioned, where it's clients own their own land. You have some where you're doing your own developments. And so what are some of the challenges you're dealing with right now?
Well, it is multifaceted because of the different products. So we do anywhere from starter homes, townhomes, in the very low end of the new construction market up to, for us, $800,000, $900,000 homes. That's expensive. That's high end for us. We don't build on side of cliffs or anything like that, like you might. So we're trying to be the best in every category that we're in, and we do fixed contracts. Something that is a little different, I think, as well for you guys.
How do you do that right now?
Well, you buy right. So, getting into the challenges, the number one thing for any builder over the last 18 months, I wouldn't say number one, but 1 and 1A is supply chain. So getting a handle on products, getting a hold of them in a timely manner, and cost control. So cost control on that scale, going back to the fixed bid project, we sign a contract with the homeowner, anywhere from 60 to 90 days before we break ground. And then that's the price. And we don't believe in escalation clauses because, our build cycle isn't as long as, those custom projects. And it's just when you're in what I would consider a price sensitive market, it's just not something that is going to fly. We know some competitors who do it, and it's really difficult.
So what is the build cycle? And it makes sense. I mean, I do know, and maybe you'll speak to this, and, from a national, like Arizona is a little unique because this market has a lot of big national builders, right? It's really dominated by the national brands. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of smaller companies. I mean, you're a big company, but in the grand scheme of things compared to national builders, different, right? It's small. Definitely for me, I'm much smaller. We're kind of a unique product. But, for them, they're going to come out and they're going to do their developments, and they're tracking this stuff same as you. Their build times are pretty quick. And so they may have price increases in the sense that, okay, well, we're going to sell the first, 20 homes at a base package of, let's just say, $500,000, but then we're going to release the next 30 homes, and now the base price for the same model is like $550,000, right? Because they're incorporating the current market pricing. I mean, is that a similar strategy to what you're doing?
Yeah. So, we review our pricing on a weekly basis, right? And we know, generally speaking, pretty far out when we're going to get an increase from somebody, but that's only on the big stuff. So lumber it's always been a monthly thing, and we get new unit pricing, down to the 2x4 every single month by the first of the month. And then that's locked in. So, it's always splitting the risk generally between our suppliers. They're going to, if they see the futures going up and they know what they're going to have to buy it at, they're going to try and go up a lot. We're going to try and bring them down. So we always know, from a lagging sense of 30 days, but things can change really fast, like last May when the lumber went nuts, we had to take it on a chin for the next 2 months of starts. We had to pay for their sins of buying it wrong the previous months. So it's always a give and take, but, the market's been generous, obviously, with, the demand, and so you can be proactive with those price increases. Like if I know I got to go up $5,000 because of the market, that's one thing. But on top of that, we've had all these these cost increases that you might add 10,000, and then you basically have to wait and see how it shakes out.
Well, it's interesting you say that because for those listening may have not picked up on that, and it really caught my attention because you said, we're checking our pricing weekly, and what's amazing to me, and I know this because of the organization you have, Ben, is that to be able to check this, I mean, I look at my systems and to be able to update pricing weekly, I mean, this is a monstrosity, right? I mean, you have to have systems, and you have to know your pricing. You have to know your unit costs, as you mentioned, your database. I mean, you have to be tracking every stick of lumber and everything that goes into the home that you can update this weekly to really forecast your cost, because with as busy as everyone is, I look at it from a custom side, it's hard to get bids, right, from plumbing. It's hard to get bids from cabinetry. And if I was weekly trying to update that, but it's a different system, it's a different operation. And so it really speaks to the organization you have as a company, because to be able to keep track of this on a weekly basis, I mean, it is extremely formatted. And I don't think people realize, how much time that takes to build that system.
Yeah. And so we try to stagger it, obviously. So if we know, let's just say, the big stuff, the lumber, the siding, the roofing, all those things, they're generally going to, even in the worst time for cost increases, they're going to give you at least a couple weeks notice, right? Then you have the smaller, maybe the siding installers, the roofers, the painters, those guys that have a lot of labor mixed in. They might just wake up, and generally it's January, right? They just got their taxes done or something like that. They realize how much money they're going to owe, and they're like, wow, I need to increase my prices. So if they all come in at once, we're trying to say, hey, you got to hold off a month. You got to come back to me in February because I'm working on this guy. It's just this constant dance. But at the end of the day, our trades are built for the volume, and they know that the way that we purchase things is going to be a little bit of that, win some, you lose some, but you're always going to have a certain amount of work. You're not going to be starving for work for, more than a week. There's always consistent work.
Well, it's interesting because you touched on a couple good points there, because it's one thing to track, steel or siding or lumber, as you're doing concrete, right? That, these are big unit costs. They are changing. They fluctuate on a weekly, monthly basis. And so, but what's really hard is the labor side, especially in labor-driven scopes of work, right? Paint, drywall, trim carpentry, whatever it may be, even framing for us, I look at this where I know some of my trade partners that I've worked with for a long time, that it's so unique in this market where they're saying, hey, my employee or my team or my crew's going to X company because they're paying them $2 more an hour right across the street. And so you're dealing with this fluctuation of labor, and it's a very competitive market. And so for you, I would imagine that's really difficult, because as you're looking in your database, your painter may be charging you X dollars a square foot for the house, but now his labor rate's changing. And as minimum wage increases, and which now dictates it goes all the way up, right? Everyone else has to have a pay increase, and, health care and everything that goes into it. So how do you open up that conversation with your trade partners where it's not an open ticket, right? Where you have to be sensitive to what real costs are at this time with inflation, but at the same time still protecting your client and yourself, to stay in business.
Yeah, it's a constant balance. Now, we're fortunate enough to, be spread all over the state and have this, great database and access to. I know what our painters in State College, that's Penn State. We have a region, a division in Penn State that does about 125 homes a year. And, they're 3 hours away, but it's a totally different market. So I know what he's paying for his painters. And then we have another region in Harrisburg, which is about an hour away. And they're our biggest region. They're doing 250 plus. I know what he's paying. And so I can look at all of that and say, well, this market's paying this market's paying this. And then it always comes back to, who is this guy that I'm dealing with? If he's the best, he gets paid the best. It's just the way it is. So it is a dance, and with the volume that we're dealing with, sometimes you pay to play. You need to bring on board a new trade that you've never used, and he's the most expensive, and you haven't used him, but you need the work done. And, so you just try and balance all of that out and hopefully get a good result. And we've been fortunate to have a lot of really good subs over the years, guys that have been with us a long time, but they can't do all the work, So it's just it's that give and take. And it really, we're going to talk a little bit about culture, but it always is a really good picture of who we are as a company in the way we purchase things. We're very transparent about wanting our trade partners to win and be successful and be profitable. And so we ask for that in return. And we're always transparent. This is what it takes for us to be profitable. So now that. Where are you at? What can you do for me? Does it mean you need more work for me to get a lower price? Does it mean that you need more heads up on schedule? Do you need, more resources? Whatever it is. But it's very relational, the way that we purchase. And we like to, even though we are competing against the Lennars and the Ryan Homes and all those guys, and we have a lot of similarities to them, we like to think that, if they have to pick between the two, they're gonna want to work for us.
I love that. And this is the path we can definitely go down. I'm going to come back to, just as far as expanding the trade base, working in these different regions, but maybe let's get into this company culture, because before we get into the internal company culture, there at Berks Homes, this is really key, because what you're showing is that there is a relationship between the general contractor or developer, as you will, with the trade partner. Mm-hmm. And that's often overseen. And, you mentioned, I want my trade partner to win. And it's a fine balance, because, you're still protecting your client, which has to happen. There's still relationships, and you have to make sure that you're providing the best service for the best price. how have you done that to build relationships with your subcontractors, your suppliers, your trade partners, so that they're on board saying, hey, when we're working for Ben, when we're working for Berks Homes, like this is the staple, like this is what we need to do to perform. This is the level of quality we need to produce, right?
Mm-hmm. So the accountability really starts up front when we onboard them. We always talk about like two sides of the fence in this relationship. Your side of the fence is the trade partner, and my side of the fence as the builder. And so what we need on our side of the fence to stay clean is we need to always have, accurate purchase orders. We need to have, really good communication on the schedule, and we need to be really good on our pay terms. And we're talking about like, being world class in all of those things is the bar. So in order for you to be successful as a trade contractor, I have to be really good on my end. And so if I can prove to them that we're performing at the high end on those items, it's always clear when they're not, and vice versa. So, sometimes you get into a situation, you're like hearing from, your production manager who is in charge of our superintendents, the guys who are in the houses every day. We're having an issue with these flooring guys. They're not consistent on their schedule. They're not showing up on the days that they're scheduled for. So you call them in, have a meeting, and what's going on. And if we can say that we're clean on our side of the fence, it's very obvious. If we're not, and they say, well, we didn't want to cause a big stink, but this guy never calls me. He doesn't tell me when he moves his schedule. Well, then it's a totally different meeting, right? And we have a lot of those trades. We have a lot of guys who they don't want to cause issues. They'll take, substandard expectations, and that doesn't work. We want to know when we're failing just as much. But go back to reputation and stuff, and how you get there. Like I said, those three things are really critical. And let's face it, pay terms might be the number one thing. We try and clean out the payables, every 2 weeks at the most. So if we can get everything processed and pay it in a week, that goes a long way. Now we have a pretty big accounting team and a pretty detailed system. So that'll always keep the guys coming back, over and over.
It's interesting. So, money speaks, right? A common term is you have to feed the meter, right? The reality is to keep the job progressing, like you have to continue that cash flow. No one wants to be a bank, the way we say that for another profession.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to do our side, and where it's a labor-driven market, cash is king, right? You have to be able to hit payroll, and and that's really important for suppliers, trade partners, and clients to understand too that as much as they can fund you, Ben, or we can fund our clients fund us, that we can dictate those terms. We can be more demanding, if you will, or at least bring that partnership to a more clear expectation with the client.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes back to early on. We're talking about systems, and what's interesting from the perspective you brought up, Ben, is that you talked about, well, there's two sides of the fence. So our side of the fence, that's one thing, but from their side, making sure that they have clear purchase orders, and that goes both ways for both sides. You talked about pay terms, you talked about schedule, and turning that around. 2 weeks, it's very impressive, because I would imagine that, part of the reason some of these trades maybe don't want to raise any frustration with the team is because they like you, they like working with you, and they don't want to, create a problem. But at the same time, you want that feedback. That's part of the partnership.
Yeah, any way we can get better. It always is. It's always a little self-serving, right? If we can get better, it means that we can demand more from our trades. And in this market, in this difficult supply chain where our average days under construction has increased 45 days, which is a ton for us. That's just a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of days. Every day that I can get back is huge, because the mindset, this is where, it is different than a lot of, small custom builders or guys that are doing 10, 15 projects a year. When I talk about cost savings or anything as it relates to a house, you have to multiply it by, we're gonna try and close for 450 to 500 homes this year. So, even if I save $100 a house, what does that do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now imagine saving the
That's
$1,000.
big money, and when you, but it is true, because I look at it even on my scale, and we're gonna have a production meeting later today with my team, which we do regularly, and one of the constant themes is build schedules are longer, and it's it's hard to get material and labor, and we're all dealing with some of the same things. And so what we're building a house today, I'm sure for you, Ben, it's the same thing. If you compare it to 2018 or 16, it's much different, and it's a real thing we have to track and measure. And so, but part of that isn't just pointing the finger at the trade partner, right? This is where it's on us as owners, that we need to say, okay, well, internally, what are we doing to be more organized? What are we doing system-wise so that they can be more successful? What are we doing to communicate our schedule? And when we communicate, are we ready for them, right? So that when they are limited in manpower and they can come out, are we ready? Is it a clean job site? Do they have access? Can they stage material? Have we ordered, the tile and appliances in advance to make sure everything's ready for them? And then checked it and made sure, all of our built-in cabinetry, everything's in its proper place, that we don't have to cut drywall. So it's eliminating mistakes where they're not going back and having to rework, and it creates frustration. And this is where, as you mentioned, if you're looking at it from that scope and that level to say, this project needs to be ready for them to become successful, our trade partner, and then be profitable, their energy and focus and willingness to be on your job site is going to change.
Yeah, clean equals quality. We talk about that all the time. You walk onto a clean job site, it's 90% of the time it will be clean after the next guy. If they walk onto a dirty job site, 90% of the time it's going to be dirty when they're done. They're not going to clean up somebody else's mess, and we like to hold people accountable, but we are very, very accommodating in the sense of forgiveness. There's definitely like a 3-strike rule in terms of how we treat our subs, and so there's a fine balance there. Everybody knows that I like to be a nice guy, and I don't want to ever change that. But at the same time, business is business, and there's nothing wrong with demanding the best from everybody. And we talk about being world class in every little portion of the job, and that mindset is, you can't waver from that mindset. It always has to be, what's world class mean for the guy that's basically punching out the house. It might not seem like much, but it's a huge job. What's world class mean for getting the job ready for the next trade? Every little detail matters and has a significant impact down the road for 500 homes.
I love that you said it. It's like, don't confuse my kindness with weakness, right? You can still be professional. You don't have to be screaming at people, but it doesn't mean that you're you can be pushed around, right? You still have to dictate the market and dictate your expectations. So what have you found the best way to communicate that? Because I feel, this has been a big part of our company for a long time, is site cleanliness, and it's still something that even today, when we have our production meeting, I'll remind my team again, we're going to speak about this today, because it's like relentless. And I tell them, hey, every time, like, we've put it in our contract. I've told my supers and project managers that when the trade comes to the job for the first time, you walk them through and you orientate them with everything and say, this is what we expect, right? What else can your team do to help with the site cleanliness portion?
Well, it's a never-ending battle. You'll be talking about this 10 years from now. It's an expectation thing, and I think onboarding is a big deal. It's hard to teach old dogs new tricks sometimes. You have guys that have been working for you for a long time, and they just kind of like slid into a bad habit. That's hard to bring them back a little bit. But onboarding is a big deal. Straight up front, you're talking about it the first day. This is how we do it. We have dumpsters. We provide dumpsters for everybody, and it's just a mindset. So we've gotten to the point now where even in our last production meeting, I don't usually sit in on them. I sat in on them, and I said to each superintendent, in our region. I said, if it's not clean, you don't click off on the PO. So I hate to do it, but this is the only way that this happens sometimes is you don't pay them, and they can wait for them to call and say, why haven't I gotten paid for this? Oh, it wasn't clean. Okay. Well, they're going to start not approving our purchase orders. We better do it. And it is right in the contract, but it's just a matter of saying that this is a priority no matter what. And we do surveys with all of our customers, and it's been rough the last 18 months, right? I mean, it's like you told me my house would be built in 5 months, and it was 6.5 or whatever it is, and there's a lot of grace there. I understand that, but at the same time, one thing, we did this really big survey, reached out to people who didn't even buy for us. They were just prospects, so it's huge sample size. The number one thing that people cared about, job cleanliness. You believe that?
It's crazy.
That was number one.
It's amazing.
That's what they cared about when they drive into a community, job cleanliness. So we always go back to that.
It's interesting you said. I was in a meeting this morning with one of our vendors, and they mentioned that just how in their network, when they look at builders, they're just a supplier, and they're like, but they work with the ultra high end, ultra luxury, and those customers are always looking, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's high end. It doesn't matter if it's entry level. Like, they care about you actually taking the time to be considerate of their investment, because it's a major investment no matter what level, right, that they're putting in. And I love how you've made it, it's punitive, but it's not overly punitive, right? It's like, we're not going to fine you a ton of money, but you're not going to get paid, right? We're not going to feed the meter. And then it really catches their attention, when it comes to signing the PO. And I may have shared this story before, but, the best example I have is through college, I was working for a subcontractor, and there was a company did a lot of work for the military down in San Diego, and we did work on the naval bases and a lot of the schools, a lot of federal work. And like anything, I mean, you're working in, I don't want to call it a remodel, but you're working on the military base, you're working in schools. And so these are finished projects where, it's over the summer, so you're trying to get in and out. No one ever talked about site cleanliness, and some of them weren't that great. But I remember one school when we went in, and the superintendent, he pulled us aside our first meeting, and this was a while ago, so he just bought a new digital camera, right? So this is dating me a little bit. But he told us, he said, look, if I find one scrap of wire, right, or fiber optics or anything you're doing, you're getting fined $50, and I'm sending it. And I just remember thinking, great, I'm going to get in big trouble for my boss, or my foreman. And so we were super conscious as we worked through every classroom and we're pulling wire. Like, we always make sure, okay, we inspected, everything's clean. Okay, now we can move on. But it's because he set that expectation. And so many times, whether it's relationships or marriage or life, like, if we don't give clear expectations, like, no one's going to follow them. We can't just expect them without telling them what to do.
It's 100% right. I mean, if I look at failures, we all have failures, professional, personal experiences, things that I can look back on and I fell down on. It's my fault if I didn't set the expectations. You can't step back and say, why didn't this happen the way I wanted it to happen in my brain? And it doesn't work like that. They didn't know that. I was working with one of our guys who, was just struggling on a couple of his tasks, and I was frustrated, and I said to myself, well, whose fault is that? He didn't know what to shoot for. I wasn't giving him the expectations of, what I needed from him. So you can judge people after you set those expectations, right?
Yeah, I love that. You can judge them after you set that. So how does that, how have you built this company culture? Because this is something you've been big on, and I know you and I listen to different podcasts, and we've networked and exchanged messages, and, this is something that's always a big part of what you're doing, which I really respect. And so how have you been able to achieve a good company culture, not just with the vendors that we've spoken about, but now internally with the 100 employees?
Well, I can't talk about it without giving credit to my father, who, is the founder of the company. He's very generous, patient, all those things. He's kind of mysterious in the sense that he doesn't get really personal with people, but he gives them a lot of respect. And so he kind of keeps that mystique a little bit of where people really want to, just do well for him. So it kind of starts with him, and the culture he's created is this driven. We really, it's one of our core values. We care about people that are driven. That's the people we want to hire. Well, I'll just tell you what they are. It's helpful, humble, aware, and driven. So I can go down the list, and we derive those. We recently redid them because it's always important to revisit them. But those are characteristics of my dad. Being helpful in every situation, always willing to lend a hand. Maybe it's not in your job description, but if you can help, you're going to raise your hand and do the right thing. Humble, that's a huge one. You're never too good for anything. You're always willing to defer credit if that's necessary. Aware, reading the room, understanding the stakes of the situation that you're in, assessing the situation that you're walking into, and then driven. That just goes without saying. We want people who not only want to be world class or the best in their business, but they care about the goals of the company and achieving them and working together to get there. That's really important. And we aren't maybe the top of the compensation level. We leave that to the Lennars and those guys of the world. But our generally our compensation programs are incentive laden. So we're all pulling in the right direction. And the way our company's structured is we have what we would call the home office, which is my office, my regional office. And then we have 3 regions. So we have this one, we have Harrisburg, we have State College. And so we have kind of 3 independent divisions that are all doing the same thing, just in different regions. We have our own teams. And so this back office, the corporate structure, if you will, you got the accounting team, the drafting team, the purchasing team, HR, all that stuff. Those people, they don't have that direct impact on the front lines, the regions, but they're bonus too. So if they're in a community and they're seeing, it's a mess and our bonuses, everybody's got different structures. Some of them are based off of, there's a portion that's homeowner satisfaction. There's a portion that's gross profit. There's sales goals, all this stuff. But it's built in a way that everybody has a stake in the game. And if the guy that is affecting your bonus is falling down, somebody's probably going to make him aware of that. And it might not be his boss,
Yeah, it's going to be his associate.
Yeah. So going back to culture, I think that it's felt like a family for a long time. Been in business 1973, so 49 years, and it's felt like a family for a long time. And that's what everybody always says. We don't have high turnover. We have I think we have 2 employees who have been here over 30 years. Wow. A handful over 20, a lot over 15, surviving, the recession, that kind of thing. So I think that everybody will tell you that if they have a prospect for a job coming in, somebody's going to pull them aside and say, hey, this is a really good place to work. We're like a family. We love working here. It's the best place I ever worked, and we're proud of that,
I love that, but this goes back to the expectation side. I mean, what's amazing is you have these core values, right, that you talked about, being helpful, humble, aware, and driven, right? And these are the core. So having a basis as a company, it just gives you leverage, because when you're hiring somebody and you're vetting somebody, you can go through those 4 things, and without directly telling them, you can see if, these are traits or attributes or, part of their personality that they possess, if you're going to hire them. And then I remember when we went to there was a visit from one of our vendors. It was actually Cambria. We went out there, and Cambria said when they're hiring someone at their corporate headquarters, they have all these cameras outside, and if someone walks across the grass, they don't offer them the job. They actually watch them as they show up to the job, and if they walk on the sidewalk, and it just I don't remember the actual reasoning. I probably should remember that for giving that example, but I remember sticking out just because they're like, hey, this is what we're looking for. I mean, this is the level of standard that we want, that someone's not going to cut corners, they're going to walk on the sidewalk and be professional. And you think about that if you have no standards, if you have no process, if you have no database of what you're looking for, you're not going to attract the right people. And really, by attracting the right people, that's going to be just a huge leap a huge leap into having good company culture.
Yeah, and it starts, like I said, from the beginning, like with the trades onboarding, right? So we have our recruiter, and I'll never forget the first time I went through, we did, actually I had one this morning for a position I have open. We just have a 30-minute meeting on what I'm looking for, type of person, and then, looks through all the resumes, who she's going to screen, who she's going to phone call and everything. And she said, I had this great candidate on paper, didn't have any, connection to him, but she said, yeah, I've put him on the, do not interview list. And I was like, really? Why? Looks like a great interview. And she said, well, he didn't pass the humble test. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, he was so arrogant. He wouldn't fit in here. And so that was my time to be like, hey, thank you. Thank you for filtering that out, because she knows it, it's not one of those values. And if that's going to come through in a phone interview, it's definitely going to come through in a personal interview.
I love that. I love that you're actually going to that level and really looking for those during that first, vetting process. When you think about the money side, are there ways to motivate employees through good company culture or other ancillary benefits? I mean, how have you been able to do that? Because, yes, you'd love to pay everyone top dollar and, that'd be great. But the reality is things cost money, right? It costs money to run a business. There's risk, there's warranty, there's land acquisition. I mean, there's just so many things you're dealing with for your side. How do you motivate people when it's, just not about the dollar?
Well, you are looking for that, that perfect match. You're looking for, your target market, if you will. So, we've had, a handful of guys just even over the last couple of years come to us from one of the public builders, and they're making more money. I just had a conversation with my colleague in Harrisburg, the GM there, who has a really good candidate for me in my region, with the guy that worked for him at a public builder, and he's making great money. And I know that I'm not in that conversation in terms of his compensation, but he's talked to him and he knows the drill, and he's like, he's looking for a great fit, and he can afford to get paid less, and if it works out, he'd be willing to do that. He knows our price range, and it's not that far off, but it's a pay cut, and it wasn't even a conversation. I've had a lot of those conversations. People want to, be valued. They want to come to work every day and like the people. We have a lot of fun in our office. We really like each other, and it makes a huge difference. I mean, it's kind of silly to say out loud, but not everybody gets along all the time in most companies, and we have 120 people, so not everybody's going to be like best friends, but at the same time, it's so important that they just quote unquote get it, if that makes sense. They get the vibe, and that we all care about each other, that you can overcome dollars, especially in this market when everybody's just throwing money. They're already making good money. If you're leaving a job right now, you're probably already making good money. You're just trying to find the right job, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you brought that perspective in, because I've seen that as well. I mean, there's a lot to be said, chasing the dollar, right? And this is something that you and I is probably a big part of our career, right, is chase experience, not money. And you think about, even to that point, though, at some point in your life, you have to look at, well, what's priority to me? I mean, it's one thing to chase a dollar, but it's another thing for that life happiness, right? If I enjoy my coworkers, if I enjoy the company and the projects and the challenge that gives me and the camaraderie, and the fun times, or, for us, where I have a group text all the time with our team, and, we have fun, we have different memes that we share, and, our production meetings and lunches. So there's like this time where we really build together outside of work. And, some of our vendors will do some of these other activities, like paintball or something. And it just brings, top golf. And you just find that we spend so much of our life at work, right? And if it's enjoyable, it goes a long way, as opposed to just worrying about, how much is this job going to be?
Yeah. Yeah. My office manager, who I hired 2 years ago, she worked for a couple different companies for many years. And she's just like, it was like a breath of fresh air coming here. She's like, I just can't wait. She's like, I can't wait to get in the morning. And I'm like, wow, okay. You don't expect to hear that. But, there's a couple things that are counterintuitive that we've done too, that just has really worked. Like, we used to do this big extravagant Christmas party, at the country club, and the dancing and the drinks and all that. And, in the recession, when the recession hit, that was like, first line item, like that. We're not doing that, save whatever, 30 grand or something. And then we started doing these potluck meals at Christmas. And, when as things progressed and, the market got better and everything, and we could afford to do it, that was a question that was posed. And it was unanimous. Much rather do the potluck. Everybody makes their own food, brings it. We're just at the office, cost $0. And then at the same time, it was even better because those dollars are budgeted, right? So now they get to, have like a cool little Christmas bonus as well on top of it. And we're just, that's a culture thing. They wanted to have more time just together. You know what I mean? So that,
I love that. I love that example. I mean, that's just a great example. It just shows the closeness, that they'd rather, instead of go to the country club or some steakhouse, hey, let's spend time together and do our own thing, bring our own potluck. So how have you conquered the most difficult thing? A lot of the listeners have always reached out saying, Brad, how do you work with family? How do you work on transition, especially as, parents are looking to retire that started the company. Now the kids are taking over. I mean, it's such a fine and delicate process. And so most people say don't work with families too hard. So how have you done that?
I think that it's just like anything, like if you're successful in life, there's certain attributes that are always consistent with people when they do well, whatever it is, sports, business, you name it. And then there's luck. And I think that's always part of it, right? If you're successful over a long period of time, you got to get breaks. You got to have some luck. We believe in our family in creating your own luck, but at the same time, you got to get lucky. And I think that we are a little lucky. So in our business, it's my dad. He is 68, so he's still here working every day, but he's not heavily involved at all. But he's very much in control still. And then my sister and myself, those are the three family members that work here. My sister is 2 years older than me. And the personality dynamic, that's where the luck comes in, I think. It's the three of us that probably, I have four sisters and a mom, obviously. And so there's seven of us. Probably if you picked three to coexist professionally and then still keep that personal relationship, it's the three of us. So that there's a little bit of luck there. My other sisters just, never were interested in the business, and that was just, their choice. It was never really something that my parents pushed down, to us in terms of like this expectations. My parents are just wonderful people, very, independent. They really fostered that independence in us. And so it was always, you could do whatever you want, and then that was very clear from an early age. But going back to the family dynamic, we did get lucky in that sense, but at the same time, we are very cognizant of the other person in the room at all times. So typically, if there's an issue and we might have a difference of opinion, it's always clear that my dad just popped into the office. He snuck out. If there's a difference of opinion, it's usually squashed really quickly because we can see the other guy's perspective, the other person's perspective. And I don't know that there's any secrets other than, being honest. That's pretty simple there. But being honest about how you feel, what your mindset is, and being unselfish. At the end of the day, it is a big operation, and we're really fortunate to be in this position. And I don't take anything for granted, and that's probably due to the way my parents raised me. But I don't take anything for granted. I work just as hard as anybody in the building, and really care about the outcome for everybody involved.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it goes back, as you were talking about, it's not just a lucky part, the personality side, but going back to your core values that you spoke about earlier. I mean, helpful, humble, aware, driven, right? And that's everything you touched on, you and your sister, your dad. I mean, this is that same dynamic, right? That these attributes you all possess and are important to you, right? So you're aware of each other and, the humbleness side. So if you don't mind me asking, I mean, was there a reason your other sisters didn't want to be part of the construction world, or they're like, hey, we're good going in a different direction?
I had one sister that just no desire, just not interested at all, just very very independent, didn't want to be tied down, just wasn't into the whole house building thing. She actually works for us as a subcontractor kind of, and helps decorate the model homes. She's very design oriented.
Does like the furnishing and design?
So it works out. She gets to, and my mom does it, so she works with my mom. So they go all over the state. She lives in Milwaukee, and so she flies in and gets to spend the week with my mom when we have a model home ready. My other sister, she lives in Denver. She's really successful in her own right. She has a copywriting business for photographers, and she just, again, not interested. And then my youngest sister's married to a farmer, and she just likes the farm life and taking care of her family. So we're all very different, but it just kind of ended up that way. But my sisters are great. We just don't have any conflict in terms of the business whatsoever.
So how's that transition been as your dad? Is not as much of a day-to-day role as he's moving on at this point of his career. How's that been? Organizationally.
Mm-hmm.
With you and your sister now, just kind of working through that handoff of delegation and leadership.
Yeah. So we have a president who. Mike, who kind of runs the show. We really love the leadership that he brings and the vision casting, and he's taken that role from my dad 5 years ago or so. So that's super helpful. And then Katie and I bring just a different skill set than Mike in terms of the day-to-day stuff. And I probably am more wrapped up in my role as a regional general manager than an owner. And maybe that'll change sometime soon, maybe sometime later. We don't have a clear direction on that right now, which is totally fine. I'm trying to build my region to be the best in the company, and that's a big swing for me, because I got some good competition from the other guys.
So how do you break that up? I mean, this is what's amazing is it's not like you have 100 employees all coming out of the same office. I mean, you're regional. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're in different parts of the state and far apart in some ways. And so how have you worked on that organization from land development to systems to, instruction and teaching and training and everything that goes with it?
Well, the interesting thing is we ran the company out of this office up until when I started 2.5 years ago. So we were not regionalized up until then. So we had we were dipping our toes into it. We've been in-state college for 12 years, 13 years, and just ran it as, a little satellite kind of, have the superintendent and a lot of people driving from here 3 hours to, do all the other stuff. And so it quickly became apparent the opportunity, not only there, but in our capital city of Harrisburg, that once we located the guy in state college, that we could regionalize and we could separate and divide. Then we found our GM in Harrisburg, and then they came to me with the big ask a couple years ago to do it here. And so it's a fairly new work in progress, but it kind of needed to happen, and it works way better than running, out of a central location, being so far away. We've worked in Delaware. We've had communities 3 hours the other way too. But yeah, the division of labor is always the devil's in the details, and having systems is everything, as you know.
So how have you worked on land development? I'd imagine in that part of the country, it's not like it's out west where there are pockets of land that are just wide open. I mean, how much is there undeveloped land? Is there infill product? I mean, how do you work through the land acquisition portion between the different regions?
Yeah, well, go back to our challenges portion. That's always, it's the unspoken challenge. It's constant.
Yeah, because you're doing 400 homes. I mean, so this is a major part of the company.
So we need to have, and it might be 475 this year. It's probably more like it. So we need to have, at all times, we need to have about 1,500 lots. Going 3 years is kind of the goal. 1,500 lots under control. So that's the primary activity that myself and my colleagues engage in, which is trying to drum up land leads. And so it's different in each region as well. State College is, up until recently, it's like 100% Penn State University. I mean, that's, you've probably seen those towns where it's just all of a sudden there's a town and it's only because of the college. It's a huge university, but at the same time, it's suddenly became a really great place to live. So up there's a lot of fields, there's a lot of farms, there's good zoning that allows to do what we like to do. Harrisburg is, like I said, the state capital, so you have that stability. It doesn't go up a ton, it doesn't go down a ton. It's very stable. There's always jobs there, that kind of thing. There's a lot of developers out there. And then in my region, I'm closer to Philadelphia, so I'm fighting hand to hand with the big guys. They're gobbling up all the good stuff. So I got to be more scrappy. I'll take 30 lots, whereas the other guys, they might not touch. In our company, they might not touch anything less than 50, stuff like that. So it is very difficult, and we have a land vice president who keeps us on task with that stuff. Before I got on with you, I had a meeting with him. We had this really cool lot tracker that shows like graphs and charts, and when it gets red, that's when you start getting nervous. Looking out 18 months, 24 months, that kind of a thing. So it's just a constant battle, but it always seems to fall together. When you're worried, you might just come across those 6 closings that you need to hit your goals.
So what's the proportion? Because I know you do some scatter lot where the clients own the lot. What's the proportion of land that you own, that you acquire, that you're developing, building on, as opposed to, like custom?
Yeah. So custom's kind of like a dirty word to us. We don't really like to use custom because custom is like Brad Levitt. Custom to us is something that they look at one of our floor plans and they want to change the kitchen a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do. I think we'll do between 40 and 50 of those. Let's just say 500 homes would be on people's land, and the rest would be in communities. And those communities, when I say communities, I just picked up 4 lots, which it sounds crazy, but I need every lot I can get right now. So that we call them community homes because we're not building for a homeowner on their land.
Right. So, and that's interesting because, even if you're building for a homeowner on their land, though, there has to be at least a separation of systems because your build time, if you're doing 30 homes, right, and you can strategically plan that and forecast that, I would imagine that changes a little bit of the cost structure, timeline. There's just other variables and it's not economies of scale.
Yeah. So what we've done actually, as of December, it was kind of like its own little division. And actually my dad was doing a lot of that with that team because he likes, he likes the variation of the jobs and stuff like that. So he was kind of leading that charge, and that was something that I wanted to get off his plate. So since we do have 3 regions, we were doing those 40 homes in each region, like maybe 10, 20, and 10 in each region. So now we've rolled that up into the regions, and we're trying to give that team the resources that our guys in the communities have. So we're trying to standardize that even more and, put the same processes in place so they have all the same resources, because it is hard when you're just building 10 homes, and we have a really wonderful sales guy who has been taking care of all the regions on that end. And, he's kind of like the guy in the corner, and they're like, oh, I don't want to deal with that, guys, the purchasing guys and stuff. I got 10 houses sitting on my plate. I don't care about your one that's in a field somewhere. And so we, that was a problem that we identified and had to bring that in. And now that's, under our control as the GMs. And I think it'll probably clean that up and make that process better as well.
Well, it's the reality of it, right? It's evolution, refining. You have to continue to work on that and find that process that's going to work and be most beneficial for everybody. So it's interesting. You've said, just a few years. What was your career life before, coming into this role as GM? And was that always a plan at some point to come back and work on, within the family business? Yeah,
it's kind of a wild experience now that I look back. I worked at the family business every summer. I was working for those Amish framers in high school and college. I got my first taste of high level production home building at that time. I really enjoyed it. Knew I didn't want to do it as a career. Was going to college, chose finance and accounting. Not because I liked it, but because I felt like that would give me the best chance for success later. And now looking back on it, just a really lucky, good decision that I made. Coming out of college, I did work here for a couple years, 05 to 09. Recession hit in 08, and I was looking around and I felt like I didn't want to be the son of the owner who was kept on the payroll because I was the son of the owner. Not that I'm not saying that, but I felt like it would have been it was just a good time to spread my wings and do my own thing. Was getting into flipping houses for a couple of years. It's just a wonderful time of the recession. There was a lot of houses to buy, it's just tough
there were
to
a lot
sell.
of houses to buy. That was a tough time.
That was a good experience. No area got hit harder than yours, obviously. But it was a great experience, and it just kind of tripped into remodeling, because that's what people thought I did. And, I had no desire to be in remodeling, but that was the opportunity that was given to me. And just ran with that. Decided to make a real company out of it after doing it just solo for I don't know, 18 months. Brought in the design portion of design build, and did that brought on a partner in 2014, one of my really great friends and subcontractors, and did that until 2019 when I decided to join up with the family business. And it wasn't, I wanted to at that point. I was ready to come back and see the opportunity that was in front of me. And, I had some head trash to get rid of, I think, in terms of, my place in the company, and that, I earned it on my own and that kind of thing. It's kind of hard to articulate, but, when you have responsibilities like that, you're always worried that you're not looked at differently and that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it was really something that I wanted to do. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, can we make a spot for me, and I'll earn my way, wherever I go. And he was thrilled. I think he was really excited about it, and it's worked out great. And now we're heading off into the next phase of the business, celebrating 50 years next year, which is kind of crazy.
Amazing. That's just, 50 years is incredible in the home building business. It's really a great achievement.
Yeah. It's something that, I think that we don't talk about a lot, but, I think that, there's a lot of people here that are proud of that. And, we're getting into the whole, like, you built my grandparents' house type thing. You know what I mean? And
it's amazing.
And, they'll say, sometimes my dad will meet somebody and they'll say, hey, do you remember the name, Johnson and blah, blah, blah in this town? And he'll be like, yeah, maybe. Well, that was my parents. You built my parents' house. And, we're building our second home with you guys. And oh, okay. He might not remember, but maybe he will. He used to sell a lot of houses himself. I think his record was 80 in 1 year, back in the early 80s. The people that had their own land, that was the business back then.
Yeah. That's just amazing. What a great story, and I really appreciate coming on, Ben. Just so much wealth of knowledge, and just as a sidebar, what do you enjoy to do? What do you enjoy for fun?
For fun, outside of work.
Like outside of role as GM.
I'm a sports guy. I'm a Philly sports guy. I love sports. I love watching sports. Like you, I play. I try to play once a week or so. A lot of.
And those Philly fan bases, they're pretty lighthearted.
Oh yeah, really easygoing. We have great reputation. It's nothing.
Great reputation. Speaking of companies, speaking of reputation, it might be a little bit different. For
it
the
is
Philly
totally
fans, so.
different. It's a different mindset. I've seen it all. My first game at the Eagles was when I was 8, and that's where I learned all the bad words. No, right now in the phase of my life, I got 3 young kids, 9, 7, and 4. So, you caught me by surprise there when you said, "What do I like?" Because it's like,
yeah,
it's really narrow right now,
Yeah.
But love to travel. Last couple of years have been annoying with that stuff, but family time, man. I don't have 6 kids though.
Yeah, you're not too far off. It's funny because I have, like, kind of how you grew up. I have 5 daughters and a son. And it's funny because as a kid, I used to love playing like Mario Brothers and stuff, right? The classic, Nintendo. We had that as kids. As we get older, we just don't have time. That's not, but my son, who's 6 now, like, he was playing with his cousin. And so, like, on the weekend, he'll be like, Dad, can you play Mario with me? And we'll have fun. It's just fun at that age, to play and, find those moments. But he's big into basketball and golf, which is fun because those are definitely my passion. So it's fun to love those.
I do have one thing that I've recently gotten back into. I was a big Legos guy when I was little. Okay.
Yes.
And
right.
now that I have, a son of my own and he likes Legos, now I'm in touch with, what's out there, and it's unbelievable.
Nothing like what we have.
No, I had like the basic blocks. I mean, so I've probably spent more time in our finished basement putting Lego sets together over the last 2 months than I have in my whole life, and it's kind of like more my thing than my son's at this point, or building this big city. So, every weekend I find myself like, I think I might go to Target and see if that next section of the city's available.
Next phase is out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but the funny thing is, Ben, it's like when you're a kid, like you couldn't buy a $30 set of Legos, and now they're more expensive now. But the reality is, now you have the opportunity where you actually could go get a set, and it's not, you can actually do it. And so, same when my kids are playing Legos and, Transformers, I'm like, hey, it's like bringing it all back.
My wife's like, we need a Lego room at this point, because I'm building this stuff and just like putting it in my son's room, and he's got like this city, and I'm like, hey, I'm having fun.
Oh, that's awesome, Ben. I really appreciate making time. I know how busy you are, especially in your role out there. And as we close here, so where can our listeners find you?
Well, our website, berkshomes.com, BERKSHOMES.com. I know you haven't seen me a lot on Instagram. I'm just struggling with keeping up with everybody, but my handle is BHDB_Ben. And really that's my remodeling company, which still exists. My partner runs it, and they do a lot of cool stuff over there as well. That's BH Design Build. You can check them out. They do a great job with stuff.
Well, Ben, you've been amazing. Thanks for sharing some of your secrets on hiring, vetting, company culture systems. I mean, it's so valuable. So really appreciate it.
Next podcast we'll do the mistakes. That'll be a longer one. Then
right? We're really going to air some dirty laundry. I could go on for a couple hours. I don't think we can kick out within an hour.
Right. So, hey, thanks. I appreciate it. It was fun.